Good
Okay.
morning and welcome to the Female VC Lab podcast. So, Delilah, why don't you introduce yourself, your name, your title, and the name of not your fund, but what you do?
Thanks, Barbara. Such a pleasure to be here. Always great to catch up with you. So my name is Delilah Panio, and I'm the Vice President of Capital Formation for the Toronto Stock Exchange. And I do that living here in Los Angeles. So I work with U.S. companies that are looking for growth capital and are not yet familiar with, but should probably be aware of something we call public venture capital.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, what inspired you to go to the TSX and become an investor? Like, what was your career path to get to where you are?
Well, it's actually an interesting story because I started with the TSX 20 years ago in Canada. I'm Canadian, and I started as a very junior business development gal out of pretty close out of MBA school, and moved to Toronto. Was there for 10 years in business development, so really learned being part of the exchange, and but within Canada. And I actually, at the time, I led the U.S. initial business development efforts, and we used to do these big road shows across the country in the US to educate CEOs and investors and the ecosystem around capital formation in the US. And what's interesting is when I think back now is like I actually created this job I have now 10 years ago by starting all that marketing effort in the US. And then
Right.
10 years ago, I actually quit. I left Toronto. I moved to LA for sunshine, obviously. And I had my own startup. So I totally understand and have significant empathy for all founders of companies. My startup did not work for lots of very good
For
reasons.
all kinds of startup reasons. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. I have my real MBA and I have my entrepreneurial MBA, which was more expensive, but also way more valuable. And then I was a CEO of a health company for a couple of years, was always very much in the ecosystem. Obviously, that's how you and I know each other. I was
Yes.
mentored a lot of companies, was part of Women Founder Network here in the LA area. And then about 2.5 years ago, TSX decided that they saw a significant opportunity in Southern California for earlier stage companies to consider going public in Canada. So they reached out to me, and at the time I was in consulting, and I thought, oh, I can't go back to the corporate world. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to have another startup. And then I just thought about, oh, corporate paycheck. What would that be like after a while of not doing that? And so what the great thing is, as you and I share this, very passionate about entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and especially around educating all entrepreneurs on all of your capital options. So part of
Yes.
what I get to do for TSX is by saying, hey, there's a whole list of different ways to raise capital that you might not be aware of. The media especially perpetuates this vision of the holy grail of angel capital to venture
Right.
capital to being sold to some big great company, which you and I know statistically does not work out for most companies.
Well,
So
it's absolutely a gamble. We'll say that.
again, what's key, like for me, what I'm passionate about is that every entrepreneur should know all their capital
100,
options.
100%. They absolutely should understand
Yes,
100% all their capital options.
and the pros and the cons of each. Because listen, every
Correct.
external dollar comes at a cost, as it should. It's
Yes.
not your money.
Right.
So understand the pros and understand the cons. So venture capital has lots of pros and has lots of cons. And
Mm-hmm.
going public is certainly, most companies should never go public. I'm the first person to say that. But for the right
That has
company
pros and cons as well.
with the right strategy and the right understanding of it, then they can make an educated decision about what's right for them and the company.
Correct. Correct. 100% agree. Thank you for bringing that up. TSX, they don't really have an investment thesis, but how would a company approach you and what is your criterion? Let's call it that way. What's your criteria there?
Yeah, there's a couple of key considerations I would say when I talk to US companies, because first of all, it's like, how do you even think about if going public or public venture capital is right for you? How do you, as the CEO, your investment, or your management team, thinking about, oh, should we go public? Should we go public early? How do we think about that? Especially in the US, when the average IPO is like 250 million. What used to be a growth capital market, the public markets here, has really become a exit market. So
Correct.
companies are staying private a lot longer,
Yes.
and now we just have these big IPOs. But in Canada, we are tailored to small public companies. So we are really a growth capital marketplace. And
Okay.
so for the CEO, you should be thinking of, okay, like I want to build a legitimate big business that we're going to take to NASDAQ one day. That should be your mindset. And it's amazing how even just physically your energy shifts. You're saying, oh, I'm building a company to sell in a couple years, or I'm building a company that's going to go public on NASDAQ one day. That is like
Right.
my energy. And so what we offer for as a value proposition to U.S. companies is you can go the private venture capital route to going public, or you can go what we call public venture capital. And what that means is you'd come to we have an earlier stage marketplace called the TSX Venture Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the Toronto Stock Exchange for more senior companies. So you'd come to our market, and if you have a reason to be public, which number one benefits of being public are access to capital, acquisition currency, if you want to be buying other companies or retaining, top talent. So you want to be public for the right reasons. You're ready to go public, so you're ready for that transparency, and you're ready to have that fiscal discipline and corporate governance. That's really great for companies. And then if you meet our list of requirements, so in terms of our criteria, it's that we take on the venture exchange companies, even pre-revenue, but we'd be looking for at least a couple of years of working capital.
Okay.
But the key about going public and on this part is that you can be ready to go public. You could have a reason to be public. You can meet our requirements. But what I call the fourth R is reality, which is, can investment bankers sell your deal today? And that's shifts. So the companies I was talking about to 6 months ago to today are very different companies. And we are in a robust public market right now. No one would have expected this when COVID hit in March. We thought, oh God, it's over. There's no financings left this year, but now we are on track to have like record financings. We had the largest technology IPO in TSX's history a couple weeks ago. The U.S., so much capital out there that,
there's a lot of capital out there. Yeah, I'm familiar with the SPACs. Yes, very familiar. That's very popular. The SPAC is super popular.
Much capital. Yeah, so people who don't know, SPACs are basically sophisticated managers and investors get together and create a blind pool of capital. They go to the public and say, hey, give me some money and I will go find a company to buy.
And I will give you some kind of project. It could be a company to buy. It could be various things. It could be used for real estate.
But that just shows how much money's on the sidelines because they're willing to put it into a blind pool.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Thanks for explaining the SPAC. That is actually a vehicle for many different ways to raise money. Funds can raise money that way as well. So I'm glad you had mentioned that.
Yeah.
So Delilah, on a more personal thing, what are you currently learning or reading or listening to these days?
I'm actually reading a book right now that I read quite a while ago, but it just came into my sort of periphery again, and it's Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And so I'm listening to the audiobook, and we're in such an extraordinary time right now where everything is open for disruption, clearly, no matter what industry you're in, everything is open for opportunity. But for me, it's always, and when I work with entrepreneurs, and you do too, the ones who have a better chance of making it because they're truly connected to their why. This is a good business idea, which, I can make money, maybe it'll be successful in a good time, but in the hard times when you're struggling and crap hits the fan, as it inevitably will, you will quit a lot faster if you are not connected to the purpose and the cause of the business. I love Simon's stuff around your why, and so I just started on my morning walks, listening to the audiobook because he actually narrates it himself.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, and it's such a good reminder. No matter what business you're in, you've got to be connected to the purpose. And the most successful companies, sustainable successful companies, start with their why.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because for me, we talked about kind of founders. The founders I find are most successful do connect to the why, and and the reason why they connect to it the most is because they actually have that real problem. Like they actually are like, I had this issue myself. I had this problem myself. I'm now going to solve this problem for myself and other people now. I agree with you. Like that why is so important. And I don't know if you noticed this, but we noticed kind of, okay, COVID-19, how are you going to change yourself? How are you going to reposition yourself? How are you going, like you said, everything is ripe for disruption, literally everything. So how do you stay connected to your purpose, your mission, your vision? And then how do you move yourself forward, navigating what's happening now. So I'm glad you brought.
And just this past weekend, did one of Tony Robbins' weekends
Oh, you did the what? The
around.
Unleash the Power Within or something?
No, I did his World Summit, which is about
Oh, the World Summit. Yes, yes, yes,
it's
yes,
his
yes.
business one, and it's how to
Yes.
obviously do online, marketing and take any business online or your message online.
Mm-hmm.
And and I hadn't been to any of his things before, and obviously there's a lot of really good nuggets in there, especially he says business is a spiritual game, which I didn't know that was something that he thought. He's very spiritual. I'm very spiritual. I think business is a spiritual game. I think life is a spiritual game. And if you aren't connected to that why, and as he said, you have to be operating with grace, which
That's
is one
true.
of my favorite words. And it is, yeah, you cannot disconnect business from relationships, from people. And if you are connected to your why and who you want to serve, and you have a really important reason why you want to serve that demographic or that group of people, you have such a higher chance of success. And also, again, sticking with it when the times get tough.
I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, Delilah, bonus question number
Okay.
4. So how do you see venture or what you're doing, how, like the public markets, how do you see that evolving the next year?
This is like crystal ball time, right? No one,
Right.
I just think that this is a time where, again, everything is on the table for change and disruption. I think that right now, there's no doubt that the public markets are dramatically being impacted with what's happening politically, which has not always been the case in history. And so I think
Right.
I know just generally investors are trying to get their deals, companies get their deals done before the election because they think that there's going
Yes.
to be an impact, no matter who wins the election, there's going to be an impact in the markets. So I think that there's just a lot of money right now that people are looking for really good places to invest. I don't see that changing. I think good companies will always get it invested in, but beyond the next 5 months, what's exciting is to see the companies that are adapting, right? And those are the ones that are going
Yes.
to get funded. That's what
Right.
investors are now looking at. How can you pivot? How can you adapt? How are you connecting to your why of your customers, what they actually need, and how do you pivot? So there's some beautiful pivot stories happening right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Hundreds. I've
yeah,
seen multiples as well.
yeah. So we'll see with this SPAC, plethora of SPACs is booming.
Yes.
If
That's
those
going to be
companies,
interesting to see what happens with those
yeah, like
facts.
because again, the money is put into trust, and so they have their timeline to find a deal. And so we'll see. There are already a bunch of them that are coming up on their timeline that haven't done deals yet. So we'll see if the money actually gets deployed or not. That's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
But I would say that the new year, I don't know, it's going to be, I just know it's exciting times. So if you just have the mindset of there's opportunity in this chaos and everything
Mm-hmm.
is open for innovation, like everything. Yeah.
Thanks. So how do people get in contact with you, Delilah?
You can certainly reach out to me on my email, which is delilah.panio@tmx.com. But you can also easiest to find me on LinkedIn. Or we have a website for U.S. companies, which is us.tsx.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Delilah. I think this has been very informative. And so thank you, Delilah, from the TSX for being our guest on the Female VC Lab podcast.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.